薄いのアホ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップオーカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo and Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today is September 11th, 2022. We'll be shoujo and telling about the series Skullface Bookseller Honda-san by Honda. Surprise. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by my husband, Asher Sofman. Hello, Asher.
Hello, my wife, Ashley McDonald.
It's good that you know my name. Yeah. Cool. It's just another episode with the Ashes here. We're here. I'm hoping to get this one out by Halloween. Is it scary? No. But there are skeletons, and every character has a different mask, so I feel like it's thematically, it counts.
Yes.
I'm counting it as my Halloween episode, hopefully. All right, so this beginning section is going to be a very high-level overview of what the series is about and our thoughts on it. I would normally say it's spoiler-free, but Skullface Bookseller Honda-san is unconventional, and I'm not sure that spoiler-free fits what's going to happen here. That's not how I would describe what's going to happen here, but that's the attempt. Just know that,
It's
okay?
like, can you spoil? That's my question.
Spoiler in the, yeah. Whatever. Okay, Asher. So for the people who don't know what Skullface Bookseller Honda-san is,
Well,
what is it?
What is it? It is a story about a bookseller named Honda-san who is represented in this manga as a skeleton, hence the skull face. I don't know what to do with gender here. We'll get to that. They work at, it does seem to be a chain of like one store in a franchise of bookstores, and it's just sort of about the ins and outs of what that actually means. What it means to be a bookseller, dealing with customers, dealing with publishers and wholesalers, and that's it.
And everybody else in the manga, except for customers, like all their coworkers are portrayed also with some weird mask, like a gas mask. One of them is a rabbit.
Yes.
One of them is definitely the Grim Reaper, but they called him Chief Magician, and that's okay. I'm down.
Yes, that was a conscious change that they did there.
Yes, they did bring that up. So I will say that we both watched the anime first and thought it was funny. I always knew it was a manga, but I had no idea that Skullface Bookseller Honda-san is demographically labeled a shoujo until I went hunting for sound clips to try to make a new custom outro, like the mashup that I have for our intro. So I used Crunchyroll's shoujo filter, and Skullface Bookseller Honda-san was included, and I was like, what? I'm very confused. So then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it is a shoujo. Asher, we got to do it.
And then we did.
And now we're doing it. So I think part of the confusion for why I didn't think it was a shoujo is because in the anime, Honda is presented as male, but in the manga, I don't think it's just a translation thing. Like, I think it's very explicit that Honda is female in the manga version. And it's confusing to me because most sources that I find will be like, Honda-san's gender is vague in the manga. But I definitely feel like there are at least two very early story beats where it's like, how do you misinterpret this as being about, like, it has to be about a woman, basically. And because there's like a guy in the beginning who is talking about, oh, I want a bunch of books. They're all really heavy. Normally the book, the clerk in Japan would carry that for them as they try to help them out, but he's explicitly like, no, it's hard for a woman, so like I'll just do it. And then there's another point where that compares her to like her much more cutesy sister. So I haven't been able to find any source that confirms like why this change happened. And I mean, obviously Honda only goes by Honda, so I think it's like, okay, is it supposed to be vague? I don't know. It's clearly, it uses she pronouns in the manga, clearly voiced by a man in the anime. And this is just me postulating, but I'm just like, I assume they changed the gender to gain a wider audience. And because we view skeletons as kind of like gender neutral / male, and it worked. And I really hate that it did. Honestly, I hate that I fell for it.
Yeah. Do they actually use gendered pronouns for Honda in the manga? I didn't catch it.
Yes, but it's not like a lot.
Right.
But it does. There are definitely like back matter when it's not from Honda's explicit perspective, like it is in a third person perspective that uses she, her.
Okay.
If I'm being kind of gender, not essentialist about it, but being gender stereotypical about it, I think that Honda being a woman makes a lot of things make more sense.
Sure. Yes. No, I agree with that. I don't remember the pronouns. I do remember there was a short story in the back of one of the I think volume 3, where they were talking about why don't we make you they were talking, maybe it was volume 2 even. They were talking about a live action adaptation. Right, dream of it. And they were like, yeah, we'll make you a hot man. So I'm like, is this actually like trying to make the
like
editor's dream come true?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
I was just like, well, I understand why they want a live action because, it's this gets into like a larger shoujo problem, but like in Japan, it's the same as in America in terms of live action versus cartoons. Live action things are popular. Adults all watch them. Yay. We all accept that. Cartoons are this weird niche thing for otaku weebs who hide in their house, right? Like you're all weirdos, whatever. It's the same in Japan. So like for them to want a live action adaptation, I do understand because that would reach a broader, at least Japanese audience, right? I think it's weird given the subject matter in my mind, but okay.
I think it's weird given that everybody is skeletons and weirdos and masks. Yeah,
exactly. I guess I shouldn't have said subject, but that's what I meant. Like the way that people are portrayed in it, I'm like, no, but it makes much more sense in a animated medium. And I was like, this gets into a larger shoujo problem because actually lots of like we in America are like, there's hardly any shoujo anime anymore. It sucks. We hate it, right? But I think a lot of the beloved shoujo manga that we do have gets made into either a live action movie or a live action drama series in Japan. And that's great for it over there. That massively increases its popularity. But like we as an American audience have not largely learned to love those kind of live action dramas or have, we don't super have exactly a Crunchyroll for that as far as I understand, right?
We don't have a dedicated place. There is a place, I'm not sure of its legality.
I was like, I think there is one.
Yes. I'm not up on it.
I think there is one legal one.
The access to J-dramas and stuff is just not at...
The one that I know, is like for K-dramas more than J-dramas.
Well, right? K-dramas are, I think, a bit bigger, but maybe that's just because I know about that one place, Yeah. Yeah, I just sort of think Western audiences don't have that access. Or maybe it's just America. I guess I can't speak for Europe.
Yeah. Well, so that's like that's an interesting, like, weird tidbit about overall, like, why Honda-san would want it to, like, why they want it to be a live action, but I don't think it makes any sense. Yeah, so I mean, I guess we should just address here, since we did actually watch the anime this time. I feel like when people ask me anime questions, normally I'm like, I didn't watch the anime adaptation, but this time I did. So which did you like better, the manga or the anime?
Oh, the anime.
Me too.
Yeah, I know you did. We Ashley said that while she was reading, like volume 1.
It's funnier as an anime.
It's funnier, and I think, the wordiness
Yeah. Oh
it
god,
just
the wordiness
translates, or it goes down easier when someone's talking than when you have to read it.
Yeah, it just goes faster too because it's all like 12 to 13 minute episodes. So these chapters that were taking me like I don't know, like 20 minutes to read, they're just so dense in the text. Take 6 minutes, you know, in the anime.
Right.
I just also think like the comedic timing lands better. It's more obvious that it's supposed to be comedic. I feel like the manga comes off almost purely as like a I want to teach you about what working in a bookstore involves. More than like it's still funny, but I only laughed out loud a couple of times, whereas I think the anime is like hilarious. Anyway, what is overall your favorite aspect of the series, regardless of manga, anime? Who cares?
Well, what's yours?
What's mine? Well, I do really appreciate learning. I mean, I do work in digital books. So there was a chapter where Honda goes to the offices of Rakuten Kobo to learn how like ebook distribution is different than physical books. And so I was reading it on Rakuten Kobo, and I kind of work at a competitor of Rakuten Kobo. So I was like, this is a little too familiar for me. Like, get that away from me. But I enjoyed learning about like what working in a physical bookstore is. Like that was fun. I liked the eccentricities of the customers. That's fun.
Okay. I think I liked the kindness and camaraderie between like among the booksellers. So volume 4 was far less interesting to me.
Yeah, volume 4 is far less interesting. It's like it's funny because of how meta it is almost.
Sure. Yeah. And I ended up thinking now and then about similarities and differences. I worked in a library for a while, and we would get some characters too, but it was you come to a library for a different thing than you go to a bookstore for, and all the more so a bookstore in a different culture. So there wasn't that much overlap.
Interesting. Yeah, but what you were saying about like the camaraderie, like yeah, I do think that this manga could have easily been like meaner than it is, right? Like, but Honda does a really good job of being like, no, at the end of the day, I love my job and I love my coworkers, and you're like, oh, that's nice. There's only one chapter in which Honda got in trouble for that we'll discuss,
right?
Where it was less happy. So I think that's a double-edged sword because I think there's actually a lot of censorship that's happening, but it's still nice. All right, well, so that's gonna do it for the overview section here. So this manga is available from Yen Press in North America. The anime is available on Crunchyroll. Hi, everybody. This is Editor Ashley from the future's past, jumping in to say that Asher and I are currently boycotting Crunchyroll over their horrible pay of dub actors. So while we did love the anime of Skullface Bookseller Honda-san more than the manga, we currently do not encourage you to watch it on Crunchyroll until they learn to pay people properly with their Sony money. Now back to regularly scheduled programming. We did read, as I said, we read it on Rakuten Kobo, so we read a digital version. That was because the digital version was like a third of the price of the printed version. And listen, there's some wars about print books versus ebooks in here that we will also discuss. And that's all. I'm just saying I read the ebook. Okay, I know. I know there's feelings about that. So onward we go to spoiler question mark section. So I think it is noted even by Honda-san that a lot of the stories are about foreign customers in particular. And I think part of that is because, well, it was confusing to me because Honda works in the comic section taking care of in particular the American comic section. But, you know, all the questions that they're asked are about manga, right? Like, they're like, where can I find the story of Saiyan Koku, the Po clan? Like, lots of shoujo is actually mentioned, along with, you know, like Tezuka, like, where's Bleach, and like, blah, 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 right? So it's never like, well, how can I find Spider-Man, right? Like, that's very little to do with it. So it comes in hard with a lot of like eccentricities of foreign customers, and, you know, having been to Japanese bookstores, being that foreign customer.
Yeah, I was gonna say. That's you.
It's me. I don't think I never just walked up and was like, hey, find me this doujinshi tentacle porn, you know? Like,
right, but you can imagine it, can't you?
Oh my god.
Just because you are a tiny, anxious, polite person doesn't mean...
I was like, yeah, I actually think it's really bananas how these people blitz in this manga and like are just like, I don't know. I guess I also thought it was weird that Honda is like, feels bad that she can't communicate well with them in English, because unfortunately English, even for the people who are like, I'm from Mexico, I'm from France, whatever, I think English is kind of the quote unquote universal language here. So
yeah, it's you get taught, English is taught more widely than Japanese is, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, Honda's like, oh, I feel so bad that I can't talk to them proficiently in English. Like, I start stumbling. I only know like really basic English. And I'm like, no, I feel bad that I came to your country and I'm being an annoying little punk. Being an annoying little punk white girl who can only speak English. Like, don't feel bad, Honda. That's I don't think it I mean, again, it's like Honda's really good at being like, oh, all these foreign customers, they're so cute and passionate. And it's just like, they just approach the bookshelves and are like, look at all these books. I love them. They love manga so much. It's so touching. And I'm like, oh, we're so freaking annoying.
Well, yeah, like, there is a chapter where someone's like, why is every story in here so sweet and charming? And it's like, Honda chooses to do that. Like,
yes,
she is giving us like the, not only like selecting certain stories, but also like presenting them in a particular way. And that is how I think it's a way for the bookstore to make sure that they're portraying themselves positively and portraying their customers and suppliers positively, and also a way for Honda to like make meaning.
Yeah, now I'm wondering if it's also like, you know, Honda doesn't want to piss off their native audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want to be mean about your Japanese cousin, but we can make fun of foreigners. Like, they're so funny. Like, fair enough.
Yeah. It's also like, I imagine if they are dealing with foreign customers who are looking for English titles, again, more of them will know more English. And so there's fewer funny stories because the interactions go more smoothly.
Oh, well, yeah.
And then if they're interacting with Japanese customers, then there's no language barrier.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to remember if it was ever said like which chain Honda works at, like Book Off.
I don't think it's ever said.
Okay.
I think they like went out of, either Honda went out of her way or the editor or whatever went out of their way not to name the bookstore. But
I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be in Tokyo, so that's a big reason why it's probably just like super eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think somebody wanted us to talk about the way the Fujoshi girls are portrayed in particular, and I was like, what group is this that's like traveling together like this? Like, this gang of Fujoshi girls are like, we must go to make our pilgrimage to Japan.
That actually, absolutely see
You
that
could see
happening.
that?
No, I'm looking back on who my group of friends in high school, and if we had gone on to remain friends in college, like I'm not a Fujoshi girl for several reasons. The reasons are I am not a girl, and I'm not like into boys love more than anything else. Those are my several reasons, just to be clear.
Two big reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. If we were adults with the power and money to travel and indulge our interests, of course we could have gone to Japan together.
Yeah. I guess it's interesting because I went to Japan with friends several times, but I feel like our interests were disparate enough that I hope we didn't feel like a strange gang of foreigners. I mean, I'm sure sometimes we did, but at least in bookstores, I hope not. Oh boy. All right, so we alluded to this chapter before, but so the one chapter that's not all like Rosie McRosie redeeming pants about customers or working at a bookstore, every aspect of it is this customer service like training chapter that Honda has to do, and mostly so it's an offsite. So Honda like in their spare time or whatever has to like go to, or like maybe it was during a day and they just had to like give Honda off. They were like, Honda is our sacrifice, basically. Only one of them had to go, and like they're like, report back to us what it's like. So Honda's like, ugh, okay, and goes, and it's all about like learning to smile properly and just like really aggressively grilling everybody about how they say welcome to the store and how they're smiling. And I'm like, yeah, that feels accurate. It feels like it's taught by two smarmy marketing people who you don't want to hang out with. And like there's one person who's naturally good at it, or like two people who are naturally good at it was one person who is naturally good at it. Everybody else is suffering. One person who looks like they should be good at, like if you're stereotyping pretty people or whatever, and then she's really bad at it. And so Honda's kind of like, this is a waste of time, and like this sucks. And then apparently behind the scenes, got some reprimands, which like relatable.
Yeah, and like she wasn't being mean about it. Like you said, this is Ashley's interpretation of the two people running the workshop.
It was mostly like pretty neutral, skewing like semi-negative. It wasn't like overly negative.
Yeah, it's like the impression I got was that Honda was being honest, but also trying to
save that face.
Yeah, no, it's not like she disliked the people, right? She was like, I dislike this.
Yeah.
And like she has,
it also just didn't seem like the most effective way to like teach it, right?
And this might be cultural as well. I know I have had these customer service trainings in my job, and I'm sure you have too because you work in marketing. So like the impression I got was that, oh yeah, okay, like all these people who are here are trying their best. It's not meeting anybody's real needs. But like nobody's oppressing anybody else, at least within these people. So I was actually surprised that Honda got reprimanded for it.
I feel like I was not surprised. What surprises me is that story remained in the anime. Because I was like, obviously they chose to take out certain stories for the anime. And so to me, it's like they could have easily like retroactively censored, right? But they chose to include it. And I'm like, that's interesting. There's so many like stories that I'm like, I guess the anime and the manga are not big enough for people to have extensively written about those things where I'm like, I feel like Honda gives us so much behind the scenes, and yet I'm like, but I still have these really big questions, you know? So that's weird and interesting. One of the other things that stood out to me was the portrayal of ebooks. Came in hot, honestly. Again, like pretty soon, like pretty fast from what I remember. Like in volume 1 or 2, one of the stories, it's like just generally setting up how books are sold and print books, and then it describes ebooks as like, what was it? I think I wrote it in my notes. It was like, ebooks are doppelgangers from another universe, and I was like, you don't need to come in that hard. And I guess for me, in some ways, because my bias is in ebooks, right? Like I could care less at this point. I couldn't care less at this point about like whether I own a thing digitally or in physical format. Like usually if I really, really love a thing, I want to own it in all the formats or like have access to it in all the formats. So otherwise I'm just like, yeah, okay, like whatever. I need to save money. Like there's other factors, right? Like I just don't like, where am I going? Is it easier to access one way or the other? Whatever. I don't really care. But I feel like this is helpful to me in like understanding more why people get so bent out of shape when things are out of print. And at the same time, I really wish everybody who's been out of shape about really old shoujo licenses being out of print read this manga. Watch the anime to understand. No, more read the manga, because the manga is going to go into like the nitty gritty details of like why, and I feel like the anime is going to like go faster through that, right? So I just wish it's like, yeah, this is a complicated problem. Distribution and discovery are really difficult problems in both print and ebook. So like, please don't,
Yeah.
Don't think it's just like, ooh, people just like don't want us to have books. It's like, no, book publishing is actually incredibly awful. Like most books do not sell in any significant capacity. I think one of the interesting things in this was when they were discussing like what do you choose to put in the bookstore, and one of them was like, you always have to have something for the hardcore fans, so like something really niche. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's the exact opposite of the tactic that Barnes & Noble is taking right now. And that's like annoying people, right? But the reality of publishing is that like 99% of books that are published sell less than like 100 copies or like 500 copies, like something really small. So just like, how do you balance those things? And then I think in ebooks, it's like, okay, you have to worry about that kind of like space less, but then discovery becomes an issue. Like, what am I gonna? I'm not gonna just like sit around promoting titles that nobody knows. Like, nobody's gonna click on that. So you still need to promote the popular stuff, right? So it's like, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And I'm just saying that it's hard, okay? Don't just think it's like, oh, you should just reprint it and we all go buy it. No. Marketing is good. Marketing should be used more probably, but like, you are bombarded with so many things, information all the time. Like, how do you market effectively? It's hard, okay? That's all I'm saying. I have feelings.
Yes, we noticed. We noticed you have feelings. I also like Honda themselves or herself didn't seem to have a grudge against ebooks, right? Like it's an alien territory for her because she doesn't work in ebooks. It's different enough, or at least she imagines it's different enough from physical book selling that she can't conceive of it, really.
Right, like when she goes to Rakuten Kobo, she's like, what is this
yeah. And she
thing?
mentions that she bought a book that she was interested in digitally because she couldn't get it physically. So like, there's a case to be made from Honda-san about these things work together sometimes.
Yeah. They don't have to be, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, I'm just like, I own lots of things in different formats and whatever, who cares? I also think that the way it comes off in the manga is, it's like not Honda-san necessarily being like, print books are God, ebooks suck, right? But she's like taking on the feelings of the customers who come to the bookstore.
Yes.
So she's like, people come to a bookstore because they want a print book. So I have to be really careful when I'm like, there's an ebook version, because they're going to be like, no, I wanted a physical book. That's why I came to a damn bookstore.
Yeah,
right?
No, like they've yelled at her.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't want people to be like that.
Right.
Like, I get it, but don't be like that. Perhaps you have a better understanding of this one chapter than I do, but I didn't understand the chapter about the difference between BL and gay manga.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say not knowing what the terms were in the original.
Right. It's like, what was gay manga?
I assume it was yaoi.
Okay.
And I know there is a distinction between like shonen ai, which is BL, and I think my understanding is also like 20 years out of date, so don't at me,
right.
you know? Shonen ai is far less explicit than yaoi. Yaoi would be like erotica, straight up, except not straight.
I think Honda definitely beat around the bush on that one. Like, I got that it was supposed to be something about the explicitity levels, but then it just became entirely about censorship, and I was like, I'm very lost.
I don't know if it was Honda or the translator, to be honest.
That's true.
Not to knock the translator. I'm just like, no. I think that's maybe where the confusion is for me.
Yeah. I will say also that it was kind of, maybe this is one of a knock against the ebook, actually, because Yen Press put all the translation notes at the end for the most part of the book, but like didn't really note as you were reading. Like, there was no asterisks or anything to indicate. Like, if a title came up, they were most likely going to explain what the title was, because each title has like a letter X'd out so they don't get sued for like copyright and stuff, right? Like, whatever. So I was like, okay. But then there were other instances where I think there might have been translation notes that could have been helpful, but because there was no indication whether there would be one or not, I didn't flip back. And then in the way that the text is already so dense in the manga, I was like, I'm not going to sit here and read all these translation notes. Like, for the most part, I knew what titles were being said in the manga itself and who wrote them and their cultural significance and whatever. Like, I didn't need to sit there and be like, My Hero Academia. No.
Right. Yeah, I also mostly didn't read the translator's notes. It was super tiny. On my phone. I was like, oh, I could put this on my iPad. But then I was like, I don't feel like it. And I feel like I recognized probably fewer of the titles. But it doesn't matter for the most part.
No, it doesn't matter for the most part.
If I was confused about something and remembered that I was still confused about it, by the end I would go and see if there was a note. Like Fudanshi, I couldn't, either I didn't know or I didn't remember what that term meant. It comes up in like the first volume, then it comes up again in the fourth one because it is rehashing some of the old stories. Or rather, it gives you the original Pixiv versions of the old, like, first few chapters. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't know what that meant. It's actually clearer in this version of the story, but maybe I will just go and make sure I know what I'm talking about. So I checked my work there.
Yeah. I guess we should have mentioned, so this manga did start off as a like straight up Pixiv manga, then move to, I still think it's like a Pixiv related magazine, maybe don't quote me. I don't know anything. It's published by Kadokawa, so maybe not, or whatever. So yes, so I in the way that, you know, Horimiya also was a webcomic before, there's kind of like two different versions floating out there, at least for some of it. I think that that's also part of the, I knew it was a Pixiv manga, and I think that's part of the reason that I assumed it didn't apply to like the shoujo or shonen demographic labels at all. Like I was just like, this has been and yeah, but I guess in the same way that Horimiya eventually, you know, got picked up by a magazine, and that magazine has a demographic, I should have known. Did I already ask you? Did you learn anything about how book publishing works? Did we go over this already?
I had no conception of wholesalers. Like, I've heard the word wholesale before, and I just never thought about it, like what it actually meant. So I learned about wholesalers.
You learned about wholesalers. That's good. I feel like I kind of did too. Like I'm always like, okay. I feel like I did know what it was before, but I was like, this is helpful, clarifying. I still was a little confused in the ebook term, but then I thought about it in terms of the way that audiobooks in particular are currently distributed to my company, and I was like, okay, I see. We never like use that term, but I was like, all right, I think that's what it is. So yeah, so wholesalers, you get to learn about wholesalers.
Hooray!
Hooray! It's very fun, you guys. I swear. I do really like just how meta the manga is in general. Like it's very interesting storytelling. With like, okay, we mentioned that volume 4 sucks more earlier. That's because there wasn't supposed to be a volume 4. They were like, the anime is coming out, and Honda was like, I don't work at this bookstore no more. I'm a full-time manga artist now. And they were like, yeah, but the anime is coming out, so like you need to like hype this up. And so Honda was like, okay, like let's try to do interviews with other people in the industry, and they're like struggling to find stuff. So like one of the chapters is just about struggling to find anything to write.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. It's getting very weird. But also like, again, these are the kinds of things that I actually like to know, because I feel like our whole entire society is garbage now. Like the way that we talk about content and view content is all so garbage now, because it's just like before, when, you know, it was like there were 3 big distribution TV stations and movies, right? Like we're all like, I understand budgeting of those things is high, right? Like there was a lot of effort put into that, lots of different people. Now we live in the society where everybody can become a content creator. Great, find a following, awesome, love it. But I feel like we are much more disconnected from how much work and like what goes on behind the scenes actually than we were before. I feel like because we're all trying to project this like, my life is great and everything is so easy and it just comes out so pretty, right? Like, all of the time. And so like, I don't know, I'm always like, I just want to tell you guys that, you know, this recording is going to end up being like 50 minutes to an hour. So that means it's going to take me 3 hours to edit, and I'm going to have to write some stuff and like XYZ. Like it's going to take me another like 5 to 6 hours to produce this podcast, on top of having read the thing and written the show notes. It's probably like 10 hours of work for me, or even longer, for you to enjoy this hour-long production. Right? Like I want that kind of brutal honesty, and I feel like Honda-san does it without being brutal. And I was like, that's nice. I like it. I want to know all these, and I feel like publishing is frequently like, navigating it is hell, right? So like, and that's a point of frustration between somebody like me, where I'm like, okay, I work in ebooks, I like know a decent amount about the publishing industry, it's really difficult to listen to only consumer side be like, rah, 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 I'm so mad, right? I'm like, all right. I need you to have some perspective, right? And I think that like, these are the kinds of things where I'm like, I feel like we live in the age of the internet and we should have all the information at our fingertips, but we are trying so hard to obfuscate and like bury this like actually important information. Anyway, this is all just a tangent about how I feel about books. Let's close out with something easy, Asher.
Okay.
Who is your favorite coworker or other character besides Honda?
Oh, Wholesaler-san.
Wholesalers. You love his like playboy, like,
yeah.
hype attitude. You liked it, that backstory where Honda was like, "Do you want me to tone this down? Like, you come off like real aggressive, kind of, and like eccentric." And he was like,
"No,
nah.
I do it for the lols." And I was like, "Yes." I liked Wholesaler-san. I also like, there was an actual coworker I really liked, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It's tough when they don't have real names or faces.
I know. I was like, okay, normally I'm bad with names and I only remember them by what they do. But I was like, again, this is like 3 levels of abstraction and I'm really just losing at that point.
Yeah.
There's gas mask, bandages.
Oh, Full Face-san.
Yes, I do like Full Face.
Yeah.
Because he has that chapter. He's the one who has that chapter where they're like, it's so hard to keep the shelves looking so nice and make sure everything looks presentable and in stock and blah, blah, blah. And then they like look at Full Face's section. It's like perfect.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? How the heck do you do that? And he's just like, I'm a chill dude. I'm on top of things. Pace.
Yeah, it's that, and he's like, and I think about how it's going to be for other people, and like that's first of all, like taking a step back, I think that's actually in a way really terrible because he's putting all that work in, and is he actually like being compensated? Like, is he putting in overtime? Like the Japanese work ethic worries me.
Yeah, no.
But it's a very noble way of thinking.
Yeah. It's definitely explicitly said at different points that they're like all working overtime, trying to stock all these books. What was confusing to me is that, I mean, less confusing, more this is a cultural difference, I guess. You know, like they talked about every day how there's different things that are being released on each day and they have to keep track of that. And I'm like, that's bananas. In America, we're just like, things come out on Tuesdays, you know, or like things come out on like maybe Tuesdays and Fridays. Like, it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I was like, that just sounds bad.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite coworker is Chief Magician.
Sure.
Chief Magician just comes in and it just unexpectedly in every situation, right? And they're just like, how many books should we order? And Chief Magician's like, give me all of them, and then just walks away. And you're like, yeah, love that guy. I don't know, are there any final thoughts we have, or do we like, it's hard to talk, it's like there's so much, but it's really hard, there's no like themes or nothing.
Yeah. And the things that there are so much of, I really can't say I absorbed.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's so much.
But you know, yeah, if you want to learn more about book selling,
yeah,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good, fun tutorial. You want to work in a bookstore? Sometimes I'm like, can I work in a Barnes and Noble? Probably not.
It would be hell, but you could.
I could if I want to take a severe pay cut, which I don't.
Right.
But maybe someday when I'm old and I just want like a part-time job. All right, well that's Skullface Bookseller Honda-san, just in time for Halloween, hopefully. Thanks for listening to Shojo and Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns. Need to tell us who your favorite bookstore coworker is? Email shojoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Asher, people still can't find you on the internet?
No, even less so.
Even less so. Great. Are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the show reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time for a complete unknown. I have done no planning yet. Well, my only planning is that I want to get some fresh voices on the podcast, so people that have not been guests yet on this podcast. That's my only goal. Who they are and what series they'll pick, I do not yet know. But stay tuned to find out. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Guy got staying on the sun.